Welcoming into the show, Robert H. Bork Jr. He's the president of the Antitrust Education Project. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you have ExxonMobil. They are a huge oil company and they are giving off the appearance of being pretty immune to anyone attacking them, but they have had some difficulty with ESG investors. Tell us what's going on here.
Well, as ExxonMobil is, one of the huge global oil and gas company, um, but they are under attack pretty much constantly by groups, ESG groups, and investors who want them to be basically carbon neutral, carbon free. And it's kind of ridiculous for a company like ExxonMobil, which supplies so much energy that fuels our economy and fuels capitalism to do that. So they this year, in advance of their annual meeting, which is in May, they received a shareholder proposal from two groups, two companies that are asset managers, and proposing that their shareholders in those companies proposed that the ExxonMobil accelerate its uh, move to being carbon neutral to a point where the company just said, "Look, we can't deal with this anymore. They're trying to affect our ordinary business. They're trying to put us out of business." And this is not the first time this has happened to them, but this time ExxonMobil's management just said, "Enough is enough." And we're not even going to bother going to the SEC, which should be helping us with this kind of stuff. We're going to go sue these groups, Arjuna Capital, and follow this in federal court to enjoin them from bringing this proposal to the shareholders. Now, this caused a lot of hand wringing and jumping up and down by those groups and by the ESG community. So much so that that those two companies withdrew their proposal, but Exxon is not going to be cowed by this. So they just said, no, we want to continue this case. We want a permanent injunction. We want to block these kinds of proposals in the future because they are not designed to help shareholders. They are designed to hurt the company and harm the value of the company's stock. And that's where we are right now. A judge is trying to decide whether or not that the case can go forward against these ESG investors. And if it does, I think ExxonMobil has a good chance of stopping this kind of nonsense in the future.
So, Robert, when we talk about whether or not the actual case can move forward, can you explain some of the legal issues that they're considering when they're making the decision on that?
Well, sure, there are issues under securities law, uh, but really overarching issue right now is since Arjuna and the other group called Follow This, it's a Dutch group, uh, withdrew their complaint or withdrew their shareholder proposal. The court has to consider whether or not the issue is now moot. There is no case or controversy for them to consider, and therefore no reason why ExxonMobil should be in court suing them. But ExxonMobil's position is that so they'll do it again next year and the year after that, or somebody else will. So they want to stop this sort of thing just dead in its tracks going forward. You know, these companies represent an extreme agenda. Something which is referred to as a Goldilocks Trojan horse. That is, you organize shareholders who have these views, these environmental views, and you try to get enough of them so that you can then submit shareholder proposals that would ultimately um, be voted on by the all of the shareholders, and ultimately could, in fact, damage the company because that's their intent. And this is, again, I said this is not the first time this has happened. And in fact, a few years ago, another group organized enough shareholders to put three, environmentally green directors on the board of ExxonMobil. So companies like this that that are unpopular because they are oil and gas companies, energy companies, face this kind of stuff all the time.
So, what is the process for getting on the board of ExxonMobil? Because that to me sounds, Robert, like it. a rare opportunity, right? You're talking about ExxonMobil, like, this is a company that everyone knows. There's no one on the in the modern world who doesn't understand that they're an energy company. So the idea that they could put not 1, but 3 board members, you said, or
Yeah,
just getting 1
this
on there,
happened
I
a
think
few
would
years
be a
ago.
coup.
This happened a few years ago. Uh, a group called, I think it's called Fire Engine One. That's the name of the group. Uh, Organized enough shares to get these directors, a slate of directors that they chose, on the ballot for the shareholder meeting, and they were forced onto the board. You know, publicly traded companies are fairly democratic, and small d democratic, in the sense that they allow uh, shareholders to make all kinds of proposals. Some of them don't make it to the shareholder meeting because they don't have enough support, preliminary support. But then sometimes these groups are able to organize enough that they can get them in front of all the shareholders at the annual meeting. And it could be
Wow.
good, good things, or it could be bad things. In this case, I think it was a bad thing.
Oh, it was. And so I'm imagining that 3 isn't enough to sway the board members to vote in any significant way, but 3 people on your board who hate your company could derail meetings, they could dominate the proceedings, they could make proposals that, while they wouldn't get any real traction, could cause negative attention for the company. I mean, it's basically it's an act of sabotage.
I think that's one way to look at it, absolutely. And I think, of course, these board members are, in fact, now privy to all sorts of inside information. I'm not saying that they're leaking it out, but they certainly might not have the best interests of the company at heart, or the shareholders. And remember, the shareholders of a company like ExxonMobil, many of them are retirees. Their shares are in retirement funds. Many of them are first responders. State pension funds, that sort of thing. And the job should be to increase the value of their shares, not tear the company down.
So this is the new fight. I'm so glad to see them taking it to the courts. That's a sure signal to those who are trying to sabotage the company that they're willing to fight. I'm so glad to have you here, Robert Bork Jr. You are a gem. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you so very much.
All right, have a great evening, and we will have more Stacey Washington now right after this.